Hey everybody, this is Andy from Tennis Euphoria, and today I'm going to bring you my review of the third generation Babolat Pure Strike. And I guess for good measure, and because it has big shoes to live up to, I'll also look to compare it to the second generation, the famous Project 1.7. Tennis Euphoria is a channel dedicated to tennis racket reviews, tennis racket terminology explanations to help you buy the right racket for you, and also hints and tips for fitness for tennis. So if that sounds like something that might be of interest to you, subscribe below so you don't miss any further videos. So I was excited to review the third generation of the Babolat Pure Strike. The Project 1.7 was indeed a fantastic racket in my view. It brought kind of pure drive power, loads of spin, and also loads of control to the table. So big shoes to fill, as I mentioned, and the third generation retains some of the technology and the characteristics that made the Project 1.7 so good. So we have that control frame technology, which brings a combination of a square and elliptical head. And this is intended to deliver the control of a square face combined with the maneuverability and kind of pace of an elliptical head. This third generation has some added C2 Pure feel, and I think they did a good job of changing the cosmetics, which was risky because I always thought this looked really good, but they've done so in a good way. It certainly is still a striking racket. And with Dominic Thiem endorsing the racket, I think you have the perfect advocate for how Pure Strike players should play. He brings huge power to the table and is really aggressive and just blow your mind impressive on occasions. And I guess that's how Pure Strike players are intended to play. So does it deliver and does it compare? Well, it does compare, but there are two big differences compared to the Project 1.7, which I'll detail throughout the video. If we start with the specs, then there is one clue there, and these specs are taken from my own measurements of my own two sticks. Starting with the new Pure Strike, we have a 98 square inch head, 305 unstrung weight, a balance point that I measured at 33.5 centimeters, 67 stiffness rating with a 328 swing weight. Now the Project 1.7 stiffness rating also of 67, but crucially my Project 1.7 had a 32.7 centimeter balance point and a 322 swing weight as a result. And there's one difference. The new one certainly brings with it more plow through, a bit more power, and ultimately has that different balance point, more weight in the head. So first impressions on the wall. Now I'm going to say that I always have this feeling with Babolat rackets when I first put them into my hand and start playing with them. So it isn't necessarily a negative, but my first impression of swinging with it was that it felt a bit club-like. And what I mean by that is I could certainly feel the slightly different balance, and Babolat handles, I guess a little bit like Yonex handles, don't have the sort of perforated ends that you find on a Wilson or a Head racket, and so that just changes the feeling a little. I'm not saying that's positive or negative, I think that's very much down to personal choice, but I just generally had a feeling of something that was kind of bigger in my hands as a result. It felt like there was more entity at the end of it. No science behind that, just how it felt, but certainly in terms of swinging the racket it felt maneuverable. I thought the sweet spot felt pretty good against the wall, and it also felt quite comfortable, which was encouraging because the Pure Strike 100 third generation I felt was too stiff and could certainly hurt your arm. Moving on to first initial hits on the baseline, well I guess that's where the Dominic Thiem effect kind of took me over. I really wanted to hit out, particularly on my forehand. It was really almost kind of luxurious to have the easy depth and the easy pace and loads of spin that was coming from the racket compared to some rackets that I've been testing recently. So a nice experience, and it was certainly encouraging me to be aggressive on the baseline, and as I say, kind of just wanted to play like Thiem, hit out as much as I could with power. But that kind of initial kid in a sweet shop type of feeling started to sort of wane as I settled with the racket, and I was still having quite a positive experience. I found it to be Powerful, solid, stable. One thing I would say is that I could create really good spin with this, as I could with the Project 1.7. Now granted, there is nothing scientific about this experiment that I did, but as you can see from just drop feeding and trying to be consistent with how I swung my forehand, I was getting a very similar launch angle, pull down and spin rotations on the ball as I was compared to a pure aero, also to Spin Monster rackets, the Wilson Steam 99S and the Wilson Blade 98 Spin Effect. So that certainly cemented for me a feeling that I was having, that you can still get amazing spin out of this racket, but it also brings you some control, so you can flatten out and hit out on shots, certainly more so than you could with a pure drive or a pure aero in my view. I couldn't quite get into the groove on slice, if I'm honest. I felt that the slices were sort of flying on me. I couldn't knife it as I could with other rackets. Net, I thought it performed well, it felt stable. I think there is a bigger sweet spot here than the Project 1.7, and also found it to be quite manoeuvrable, so no complaints at net. And then on serve, it took me a while to dial in my first serve. They went long a bit, is my honest experience. But on second serve, I really enjoyed it. I could be really accurate and I could kick a second serve really nicely. Again, I guess this racket can deliver some really good spin. And what I was really pleased about overall is when I started to play with the racket more and started to play points and some games, I was performing pretty well actually. I was playing comparably to how I would play with my racket of choice, but most encouragingly I wasn't having any comfort issues, and the sort of 67 stiffness rating I felt was certainly accurate, and the C2 pure feel did seem to dampen things. At no point did I have any arm issues with this pure strike, and I had a variety of strings in it, and that's really good news, because certainly with the pure strike 100 I felt that's too stiff and I was feeling it in my arm. So what we have is definitely a pure strike, a continuation of a racket that offers great spin, good control next to its pure aero and pure drive brothers, but also some of that put away power that you enjoy from pure drive and pure aero. So I think it certainly is doing what it says it is trying to do. Is it something I could switch to, and how does it compare to the Project 1.7? Well, interestingly, I was playing some baseline points with a really good player, a better player than me, and in those exchanges I was changing between the Project 1.7 and the third generation. Now, it's probably me, but I was doing much better on those points with the Project 1.7. And what was really noticeable is my opponent thought I'd actually consciously changed tactics, when actually I hadn't. I just felt more connected to the Project 1.7. Certainly I felt I had more range of shots with the Project 1.7, particularly in approach shots and slicing. So it probably looked like I was changing tactics, but in fact I wasn't. I just felt a little bit more, as I say, connected, and felt more confident with some variety. That said, I think that balance point and the extra swing weight of the third generation does make it a better racket from the baseline, and it does have a kind of different feel which I couldn't quite sort of put my finger on. The C2 pure feel does change things, and I also noticed that the main strings now have different connector points at the bottom, which perhaps changes things too. And when I thought about that more, whilst I would probably veer towards the Project 1.7 and it made me play more creatively and I enjoyed myself more, I actually came to realise that I think people who would pick a pure strike probably should pick the third generation or upgrade to it, because it ultimately encourages you to be more aggressive, it encourages you to play more like Dominic Thiem, and it encourages you to play on the baseline a little bit more and really use its qualities of great spin, great power, and put things away from the baseline. So in summary then, Good racket if you're an aggressive baseliner who's looking for a little bit more control than you get from a pure arrow or a pure drive, then this is your ticket. It's definitely better than the pure drive VS in my view. It is comfortable enough to use, which is great. And comparing it to the Project 1.7, well, it does compare. Ultimately the molds feel very similar. It feels quite similar in your hand, but it does feel different on contact through that C2 pure feel. I think it will probably change the way you play a little bit, but it does offer a little bit more free power and easy depth than the Project 1.7. And so for that aggressive baseliner, or for that counter puncher, because it is great on defense from the baseline, then this could be a really good racket for you. It won't be for me, but that's not to say that this is a bad racket. I think it is very, very good. Hope you enjoyed the review and I hope that you found it useful. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up. That's really helpful for me. And if you didn't at the start, think about subscribing now so that you don't miss future videos. Some more racket reviews coming up for you over the next couple of weeks, and over the next month or so there'll be a couple in the fitness space too. See you soon.